to talk about all things brain science, productivity, and, just general mom life, working life, modern life, whatever. You know the things I talk about. And if you're joining me live, welcome. You are always welcome to insert comments in the chat wherever you are, or if you're listening to this does go up as the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. You can watch it on some channels, other places you can only listen. This will be episode 131. If you're listening, I'm doing the Home Alone face, like, I can't believe it. 131 episodes. And yeah, give us a listen, and please be sure to rate, subscribe, like, comment wherever you are, because that helps, the algorithm. I'm now heard in over 60 countries. That's so incredible to me. Thank you, everyone. And molto obrigado to Brazil. That is my second biggest country after the United States. Who knew? And if you are joining me for the first time, I am a brain science-based productivity and time management expert, which just means that I want to help you save time and energy, because who doesn't need more of time and energy, right? Especially if you are, a parent, or especially if you're like me, the sort of person who just likes to do more than one thing at a time. I'm not sure why. I have some theories about it, but that's a whole separate podcast, so we'll talk about that some other day. And I'm the author of these 4 short reads. They're all designed to give you more time and energy, and they're all workbooks. You can read them in an hour or less and learn something new. One of my pet peeves is a 350-page book that should have been 50 pages. This is the solution to that. And if you are looking for more time, then the place to start is definitely with 3, 2, 1 done, the to-do list solution. So check those out. And I'm excited to welcome to the podcast today my very dear friend, Christine. Hello,
Hi,
Christine.
how are you guys?
So Christine is joining us from Texas,
Great.
and she and I have known each other. You've probably seen her on the podcast before, but if you have not, then Christine and I have known each other since we were 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
Which means that next year we will have been friends for 40 years. Oh my gosh, we have to celebrate that. 40
I agree.
years.
That is a big celebration. It's a big milestone. Yeah.
Huge milestone. Yes. So Christine is also, I always call her my most diplomatic friend. So I thought it would be good to have her on because, we're at the beginning of a big holiday season push with Thanksgiving next week. And even for those who don't celebrate Thanksgiving, you're probably having vacation time. So you're going to see family more, regardless of whether or not you're celebrating a specific holiday. And so I always say that Christine is my most diplomatic friend. I think you're the person who turned me on to Nonviolent Communication, the book.
That's right.
Right? Which it's interesting because I've actually heard some people who don't like the term nonviolent communication give it a different name. I forget the name. I only heard it one time. And they said they just don't like the word violence.
Because they don't think of themselves as a violent communicator to begin with.
Yeah. I guess, I once heard that Mother Teresa said, never invite me to an anti-war rally, but I will go any day to a pro-peace rally. And the whole idea was, don't talk about the thing you don't want, talk about the thing you do want. So that was their term, was something like that. It was something like
peaceful,
more emotionally productive communication or something like that.
Makes
right?
sense.
Or peaceful communication. I don't remember. Like I said, I only heard it once. But there is this book out there called Nonviolent Communication. The author, it's been
Rosenberg, I believe.
Right, Marshall Rosenberg. Right. It's a great book. It's a short read, and also it's been out a long time, so you can find summaries of it. And the basic idea is that why don't you give the summary of the 4 steps?
Yeah, so I may not outline all 4 specifically, so jump in, but I think of nonviolent communication is, how are we mostly listening, and how are we responding in a way that's continuing the conversation, so you're actually moving it forward? Because I think the idea around keeping it nonviolent is you're not taking it personally. You're not attacking the person that you're trying to communicate with. So you're really saying to yourself, how do I make sure that I'm being an active listener? And how am I participating in the conversation so it's meaningful and
Mhm.
productive? But if you did you want to
Right.
talk
That's the
yes,
philosophy
yes.
of it, right? But he does have these specific steps, right? Like
Mhm.
observe, state what you're observing. Like I am observing. You know what? We're getting into this too fast. I forgot. Okay, before we just jump right into this, we're going to
Okay.
come back for nonviolent communication and other things. But before we jump into this, I always like to pull a card from this deck of cards. And I actually also wanted to add one other thing. So let's do the one other thing. For those of you who listen to the podcast regularly, you know that I occasionally will do a
Mm.
book summary. However, not every book I read is a perfect book, I feel like, to summarize on the podcast. However, I do feel like there are many books that I read that I don't mention on the podcast that are very instructive in some way, shape, or form. So I just thought it'd be fun to mention whatever it is that I've been reading lately that I think you all might enjoy. And my friend Christine will do the same. And then we will pull the
I love
card.
it.
So, do you want to start with what you've been reading
So I'm
lately?
back into my monthly book club that I fell out of because I was actually going to a political meeting, but that got a little depressing, not to digress. So I'm back to
Uh
book
huh.
club. And we just finished reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And
Okay. Is that fiction or
fictional
nonfiction? Okay.
account of a young lady who makes a deal. They don't call it the devil, makes a deal with a god
Hmm.
after dark. And
Okay. So it's kind of Faustian, it
yes,
sounds
and
like.
you know what the trade-off is, because there's always a trade-off when you agree to
Yes.
do anything in life, or try and get something that you want, maybe without doing the work. And so you get
Mm-hmm.
to basically follow her over the next, I believe it's 300 years.
Oh,
Yes.
whoa.
And
Okay.
then
So I guess she chose to live forever
that's
or something.
yeah, well, read the book because you'll see that
Okay.
when you don't ask very specifically for what you want, it could be
Right.
interpreted a number of ways, which kind of goes back into
Right.
this idea of how we communicate with each other. You think you're saying one thing and asking for one thing, and what that person's
Right.
hearing and giving you may not even be close.
Right. Yes, totally. Okay, great. So I am I'm currently reading a number of books related to US
Mm.
Grant, the Civil War general who won the war for the North and also later president. And I just want to mention this because I never thought I'd be reading about US Grant. By the way, his middle name, he has no S middle name, which was one of the most fascinating things that I was like, that's interesting because we all think of him as US Grant. Anyway, I never thought I'd be reading US Grant books, let alone like 6 of them. And I'm reading them because I just finished last week. I finished a book called Team of Rivals, which is about Abraham Lincoln's
Mm.
cabinet. And back then, presidents were elected differently. It was a different process. There wasn't a presidential, vice presidential ticket, first of all. Like you ran for president or you ran for vice president. And many more people could run. So when he won, there were 4 other Republican nominees who were all very, it was very
Mhm.
close race. And there were multiple balloting. Again, I don't know the whole process for electing a president back then, but it was different. So what Abraham Lincoln did was he won, and then he immediately asked the 4 men who were the closest competitors to him to be on his
Mhm.
cabinet, which apparently had never happened before. So that's why it's called Team of Rivals, because his cabinet was made up of people that before he was in
Mhm.
competition with. And I think this was so smart, and it makes you wonder like why more people don't do this, because now instead of just having the support of the people who voted for him, he now had the support of the people who voted for all 5 of those
That's
men.
right.
So it was way more unifying. And I thought the coolest thing was that of the 4 men, 3 of them became huge, like great friends and admirers. Like one of them was at like basically at his deathbed with him. Um, Only one of the men went on to hold a grudge, believing that he was the
Ah,
better president. And it's interesting too because I think we all think, oh, I should have known better. I should have known that person was going to turn on me, or I should have known that person wasn't a true friend. I think we've all had those experiences. But here's even arguably one of the wisest people that we know about who for years put up with someone who was stabbing him in the back repeatedly. So even Abe Lincoln
that's right.
falls for it. So don't feel so bad about it. But I would definitely check out Team of Rivals. And then, so what turned me on to Grant was that Abraham Lincoln, everyone's talking about Abraham Lincoln. He's so amazing. He's so amazing. Abraham Lincoln, in his letters, he's writing about this U.S. Grant guy who is just so amazing and is doing something he could never do. He's like, I can't lead an army. Thank God I have U.S.
Right.
Grant who can lead an army. So anyway, it's very fascinating, and U.S. Grant is very fascinating. And by the way, the S was added by some administrator in school at some point, and it was an accident, but
Right.
it stuck.
And didn't
So
you say he actually appreciated that because his original or his actual acronym?
he didn't really look. He didn't really appreciate it. So his real name is Hiram Ulysses Grant, and so his initials were Hug.
General
And
General
apparently
Hug.
yes, and apparently, unfortunately, American boys teased as much back then as they
Sure.
do now, apparently, and he was teased mercilessly, and so he did try changing his initials to UHG, which spells ugh,
Right.
which maybe that didn't mean anything back then. You know, it was 160 years ago. Although I'm also very surprised at the fact that I understand every single word in his memoir. Like it's not, the language does not feel ancient in
Okay.
any way, even though it's 160 years old. And so ugh. So apparently at some point someone replaced the H with an S and he tried to fix it and it never got fixed. And so he went into the military and they all called him Uncle Sam
Ah,
Grant.
okay.
But it's interesting because there is something that feels serendipitous about his name being U.S. Grant and he's the person who won the Civil War. But the S was an
That
accident.
is
How about that?
interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. So hopefully you check out some of those books. Those sound great. I can't wait to read the one Christine mentioned. And then let's see what it says today. Oh, it's upside down. Okay. Learn everything you
Hmm.
can, anytime you can, from anyone you can. There will always come a time you will be grateful you
Hmm.
did. Sarah Caldwell. Learn anything you can, everything you can, anytime you can, from anyone you can. There will always be a time you were grateful you did. Yeah. Do you want to respond or do you
Yeah,
want
I
me to
think
go?
this might actually kind of play into our topic about holidays and being around people that we might have, different energy than or appreciation
Mm-hmm.
of. And I read a great book. I believe the author is Ian Thomas, and it's Everything You Can't Say. And he talks a little bit about the idea of treating people and interactions as moments, and
Mm,
don't let any one particular moment define that person, right? Where you then
right.
decide, I can't get anything from this person. Nothing meaningful comes from my conversations with this person. If instead we
Right.
think about each moment being an opportunity to learn something, we might go
Mm-hmm.
into the experience with the idea of, maybe I'm going to learn something in this conversation. And I think it's okay
Yeah.
to walk away and feel like, nope, not that time either, because the next interaction or the next opportunity, maybe you will. So I like the idea of
Yes.
treating each opportunity or each experience as a moment that maybe I can learn something new from.
Yeah, I think that's great. Actually, to dovetail with that, I heard someone say that anytime someone says something to them that could be construed as rude, because what if the person's not being rude? What if it's a genuine question they're asking you or whatever? So anytime something is said that it seems a little off to this person, and I don't remember who said it, their tip was to say, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" And to try and think about what that person just said from that point of view of, that's interesting. And maybe that just means you say, I'm not sure what you mean by
Right.
that.
Right.
And I know that, I mean, we've all been misconstrued at some point. I've even sometimes said something and I'll say, hold on a second, that came out totally, as I hear it, my tone is not matching my
Sure.
intent. Let me
Yeah.
say that again. So yeah, I think that's great. I also think it's interesting. You never know. You go in thinking, like, maybe you go see a movie or you read a book or you sign up for a class thinking you're going to learn something, but then you learn something
Right.
else. Because so I read this book on Grant, and I learned that one of the source materials are Grant's memoirs. And so I decided to listen to Grant's memoirs, and they are 30
Ooh.
hours long, his memoirs, which is a whole fascinating story how he wrote the memoirs, because he didn't want to write them. But that's another story. But what's really interesting, and I didn't intend to learn this going in, but one of the things I thought was so fascinating listening to his memoirs was how little Grant
Mm.
editorializes. So he mentions this one person who stabbed him in the back and then went on to be the person to heal the stab in the back without ever addressing the stab in the back. Because so it turned out that at one point Grant's reputation was being impugned, and someone had said Grant did this thing, I don't remember what the thing was, and it made it into the newspapers and everyone was talking about, oh, Grant this, Grant that. And then this guy swoops in and says, I think it's horrible what they're saying about you in the newspapers. Let me help you so that we can overcome this. And he did. And it was only years later that Grant learned that this was the man who had planted the rumors. And he never gets into how he feels about it. He doesn't say, like, I couldn't believe he did this. Like, this man, I trust. He didn't say anything like that. He also doesn't say, like, I wanted to know why he did this thing. Like, what was the goal? And he doesn't say anything. He doesn't even say, like, oh, this guy died before I could ask him. Nothing. No editorializing. He just factually mentions this was the person who gave the rumors to the paper, and this was the person who then gave me the
Yes.
job that made it so I overcame it. And I think it was so fascinating because he's not a person without feelings, because I'm also reading a book where he writes letters to his wife. It's all letters to his wife. So I know he's not a person without feelings, and yet he managed to describe something that most of us would editorialize.
Oh, sure. Well, this probably we'll talk a little bit more about nonviolent communication, but it just goes to show you that the whole idea of that, even hundreds of years ago, great women and great men who understood that the things that other people are doing and are saying are really not personal, right? As much as we really want to say, I can't believe that person said that or did that, and get very upset, very indignant about other people's actions. Grant probably knew that really wasn't about him. That was either that own person's, grasping at straws for power. Who knows? And so,
or wanting to have Grant owe him.
who knows?
Who knows?
Right.
There's so many reasons.
But he's
right?
able to continue on his path of being a great leader, and and to your point, shaping the history of the United States. And I think that that's a skill that we can all aspire to.
Yes. And he doesn't necessarily include everything in the memoirs. Like, there's definitely stuff he omits, so he wasn't perfect. For sure. However, I just thought, I didn't expect to learn this from the book, but I just thought it was so interesting how here's his platform, and yet he's not using it to editorialize about things where he could have very easily. So it was interesting. Okay, so let's get into our topic. So holidays are coming, whichever holidays you celebrate. I hope there are good ones. I hope they are healthy and safe, and that they bring you joy, because I do think holidays should be bringing you joy. And to that end, I know there are different scenarios that might be playing out in terms of who you are spending your holiday season with. but I hear people frequently mention, oh, I'm going to be spending the holidays with people who are challenging to communicate with. And so, to that, we offer you this tool of nonviolent communication. As we mentioned, it's a book by Marshall Rosenberg. And he does have 4 steps to nonviolent communication. And the 4 steps are: 1, to say what you are observing. So, I am observing that you are starting dinner without me here,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yep.
just factual. Kind of like, I think US Grant would appreciate
Right.
that very much.
You have begun eating.
You have begun eating. I
Right.
am not sitting here. But then you express your feelings about that. Like, I feel left
Mhm.
out when you
Yeah.
do that.
I
And then
enjoy
your
eating
need,
with you. I would like
right.
to be part of this. Yeah.
Oh, see, this is why she's my most diplomatic friend. She just takes it to the next level, the next level. And then you express your needs, right? I would appreciate if you could wait till we're all
Mhm.
gathered before eating. Do you want to add anything
Yeah,
to
I
that?
think this is why I read the book, because I struggled with it, right? And so I read the book because I wanted to get better. I think that the more we can talk about what we need and what we want,
Mm,
as opposed to, again, you did this or you didn't do this, which even for me, it's hard to not go on the defensive when someone says, you did this, you didn't do that. So I think by saying, I enjoy eating with you, I want to be part of this experience, I'd like to eat together. Can we make an agreement that we start the meal together? And
and so that's the 4th step,
the
right? The
request.
request. Can we make an agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Because
keep
it's
going.
much
Mhm.
easier when somebody is saying, I want to be with you. That doesn't
Right.
feel, uh, that
Yeah,
feels
that feels
good.
good.
That's not something I would be
Yeah.
upset over. And then the request
Mhm.
of, can we agree to eat together, is so doable. It
Mhm.
that is not a big ask. And so I think also
Right.
really thinking about, is my ask, is it appropriate? Because we can all ask for all sorts of things. It doesn't necessarily mean we should get them or they make sense. So, right, what are we asking? Does it make sense? Is it something that your child or partner or colleague can deliver on?
Yes. So, kind of related to this, I had a thought the other day about, so follow my train
Okay.
of thought here. I know you know the story, but I'm just going to explain. We were talking about doing a little local trip with our family, and that includes my mother-in-law who's
Mm-hmm.
aging. And my husband immediately shut it down. Like, no, we're not doing this. She's too old. End of story. And I said, well, don't you want to do the trip? And he said, well, yes, I do. And I was like, I know I want to do the trip. And he's like, okay. And he's like, so we don't know if your mom wants to do the
Mm-hmm.
trip. Like, why are you taking that choice away
Mm-hmm.
from her? Maybe she'd like to do it. And we were talking about going somewhere with colder weather than Southern California. She's actually from the East Coast. I said, she might love this. Like, this is, colder weather. Like, this childhood memories. She might love this. Like, why are you taking that choice away from her? And the next words out of his mouth were, I feel like you have an agenda. And I said, yeah, I want to go to this place, as I just said. Like, why is that, quote unquote, having an
Mm.
agenda? And I do feel like sometimes, we have these terms that we are familiar with, like gaslight,
Right.
you know, passive aggressive. And then people throw them around as a way to accuse you of doing something
Yes.
bad. And I'm like, I'm just stating what I want to do. Like, don't tell me I'm doing something
Right.
bad
Right.
by
There's nothing
stating that.
nefarious going on here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing nefarious. And why are you taking this choice away from
Mm-hmm.
your mom? And he was really mad about me saying this. And I'm like, I don't understand what's wrong with this. Like, I want to do this. You've said you
Mhm.
want to do this. Just ask
Sure.
her. And it's just so interesting how humans, like, we can be triggered by things that aren't even meant to offend
Yes.
us.
Yes. Because what you're saying is, I'd like your mother, my mother-in-law, to be part of the family experience. Like, I would imagine in your head, not that you should get a pat on the back that you want your mother-in-law to join you, but that's great, right?
Right. It's just going to be a
So then
fun
it
thing.
seems especially odd, right, to have your partner kind of push back on that. But I think, again, when you really get back into the steps of nonviolent communication, even the idea of saying to someone, why are you taking away this choice, is, again, it's hard to not defend the decision
Right,
that you've
right,
made.
right.
Because most people, especially adults, they feel relatively confident about a decision that they've made, especially a decision that they've voiced. And it's not easy to
Mhm.
go back down, right? It's not easy to
Right.
rescind when your partner points something out, to be like.
So how do you think
So
I
I
should have
think
said it?
that the book perhaps would recommend you saying, I like the idea of offering your mom the choice. Because
Mm.
you're
See, this is why she's my most diplomatic friend,
right.
y'all. You see. And her degree is in psychology. So, like, I'm like, I know why I'm talking to
And
her
then
about
again,
this.
there's no then defense position
Right.
that the person you're talking to has to take, because you're not saying the decision you've made doesn't make sense to me,
Right.
now defend it, which of course you're not asking him to defend it, but it's easy
Right.
to interpret. So instead, the ask is, I like the idea of giving your mom a choice. I think the cold
Mhm.
weather and the different, like, company and the circumstances could be really different,
Right.
you know.
The change of
Yeah, like,
scenery.
what do you think? And I just think
Right.
that the way we're wired, it's easier to agree, like, "Oh, okay, you're not saying the decision I've made is wrong. You're just saying, 'Hey, here's some
Mhm.
other scenarios,'" and it just is easier to then accept the
Right.
alternative scenario.
Well, it's like that whole tip about giving people feedback. It's like, mention something that you liked that they
Mhm.
did, offer them the feedback as well as a way to implement the feedback. Because I always think that when you just give the feedback but don't give an example of how they can use that, that's not always
Agreed.
helpful. So if you can, try to give them a way to actually implement the feedback, and then close with I look forward to seeing
That's
what you
right.
do with that.
That's right.
Or not with the feedback, but, like, what your next
Yeah,
iteration
makes
is.
sense.
Well, okay, so to this end, I noticed something that was, again, these words that we all like to use, but I can't think of a better word to use in this moment, so I'm just gonna say it, triggering
Mhm.
me. I'm like, "Can we just speak English and not, all use these psychological terms like we
Yeah,
actually know what they
right,
mean?"
right. Don't
Anyway,
chat GPT the terms that
yes.
the
Oh my
little
gosh.
conversational bombs that you should be dropping.
Right. Yeah, exactly, these little
That's
verbal
right.
grenades. Yes, that are supposed to just
Yeah.
stop the conversation. It's like, no, the conversation needs to continue if we're going to
Yeah.
improve this. Okay, so I in my family, it seems like I'm the only person who likes to put the empty toilet paper cardboards into the recycle. They just seem to accumulate on the bathroom counter. I'm grateful that my family even changes the toilet paper. That's
Sure.
a great thing. I am very
Yeah.
appreciative about this. But those little cardboard
That
soldiers
are stacking.
piss me off,
Right.
especially because I ran a little social experiment to see how many soldiers had to stack up before someone put them into the recycle bin, and it was like a
Yeah.
dozen. Okay? But then I had the epiphany because, again, going back to my husband accusing me of having an agenda, when I was like, "I'm just telling you what I wanna do. Why is that
Right.
an agenda?" So, I realized that, like, I actually get a certain amount of satisfaction with seeing a
Yeah.
clear counter. And maybe my husband and daughter don't get that. So my epiphany was, what if instead of me trying to convince them to give me what I want, how about I just recycle those cardboard containers because I like the clear counter? Because I know that there are things that they do around the house that they have asked me to do. Because again, it's something that bothers them that doesn't seem to bother
Sure.
me. And look, there have been times in between, like when my husband and I first started dating, he came into my home and it was a shoes off apartment. And there was just a little mound of shoes off to the side. And he said to me, "Doesn't it bother you that they're not all lined up?"
Oh,
Because he would line up and he only had one pair, right? When he'd come visit me, he had one pair and I had like 10 pairs. And he's like, "Doesn't it bother you?" And I said, "No, it doesn't bother
yeah.
me. That's why it's like that." However, I also had no problem getting a little shoe rack and setting it up. And actually now I do prefer that. So, there are times absolutely to why not try
Yeah.
something and compromise and whatever. But this cardboard thing has been brought up many times. And the only person it bothers is me. And so I have decided to let go of it
I love
bothering
that.
me and enjoy the clear counter that occurs when I throw these guys
The
into
recycling. And
the recycle.
let me
So,
ask you something. I'm assuming
yeah.
you have a trash can in your bathroom, just yeah.
Yes.
And so perhaps in their head, they have taken the step of not throwing the cardboard in the trash can where they know for sure
Oh my
it
gosh,
doesn't belong in
Christine.
there.
Wow. Wow.
Ah.
For those listening, I'm doing WOW with my mouth. Wow. So anyway, I was actually going to bring this epiphany up to my family later today and suggest it to all that we all have these
Mhm.
things that we like to do and that we don't like to do. And maybe if we all just do a little bit more of what we like to do, our house would be a little bit neater instead of trying to convince each other to do the things that we think are important, but that the other people don't
I
think
love
are
that.
important.
I love that.
So, oh my gosh, that's our time. It just flew by. Any final parting words of advice on the holidays and having challenging
Look, I
conversations?
would recommend the listeners go on. There's the website for nonviolent communication, the books at the library. There's all sorts of, to your point, articles that summarize it. But take advantage of the opportunity to not take offense, to observe and listen, and really think about what you want out of the conversation. And I loved what you said, Allegra, about the cartons, the cardboard. You don't have to die on every hill, right?
Right.
Like, you can decide, okay, they're not being thrown in the trash can, so you don't have to fish that out. I
Right.
guess I'll take them to the recycling. I like that.
Yes. Yes. And like I said, the only person getting bothered by this
Right.
is me. So why am I creating this drama for
Yeah,
myself when they're not trying to create drama for me and they don't feel any drama themselves
right,
about it?
right.
So thank you all for joining me. Be sure to like and subscribe. And next week will be a rebroadcast because I'll be taking the week off of what to do with holiday leftovers. So join me for that. And I will see you in December. Be sure to like and subscribe and rate wherever you listen